Imagine for a second a man barely 56 kilos in weight and 1 meter 60 in height, throwing down giants who outweighed and towered over him, all without losing composure or even loosening his scarf. Sounds like a legend, doesn't it? But this man existed. Kyuzo Mifune, the first judoka in history to receive the 10th dan during his lifetime, and, not without reason, called the God of Judo. In the next few minutes, we will unravel the incredible story of how a village boy, with no apparent physical advantage, became the most feared and respected technician on the planet, mastering the art of judo without a single extra muscle. His legacy still echoes today, inspiring both athletes and thinkers alike. Martial might, where warriors live forever. Kyuzo Mifune was born in 1883 in the city of Kuji, Iwate Prefecture, in northern Japan. By then, Jigoro Kano had already founded the Kodokan just a year earlier, in 1882, with a revolutionary vision, teaching maximum efficiency with minimum effort. But let's be honest, back then the idea of defeating an opponent without resorting to brute force sounded almost like magic, or at least utopia. The few dojos that existed were humble wooden halls, rudimentary places where technique was still being forged, far from the sophistication we know today. It was a martial art in diapers, searching for its identity in a Japan opening to the world, but still valuing tradition and discipline with almost religious intensity. In this raw environment, filled with challenges and an art still undefined, appeared a young man who would not just change the rules of the game, he would rewrite them entirely. Mifune's story is not one of a child destined from the cradle, but of an indomitable spirit. From a young age he showed a strong character and an uncommon discipline. In 1903, at only 20 years old, he decided Kuji was too small for him and traveled to Tokyo to study at Keio University. There, encouraged by a recommendation from his former teachers, he joined the Kodokan, the mecca of judo. His arrival was dazzling. It is said that in his first practices he surprised everyone with his speed, tactical intelligence, and precision of movement. Though he weighed barely 56 kilos, he could topple larger judokas thanks to his extraordinary command of Kuzushi, the art of unbalancing the opponent. In just 3 years, by 1906, he had already reached 3rd dan, something nearly unthinkable at the time. His rise was so swift that he soon caught the attention of Jigoro Kano himself, who regarded him as one of the Kodokan's great talents. His peers described him as tireless. If he wasn't practicing throws, he was seeking Randori with any adversary, regardless of rank or size. That rebellious young man, just beginning his path, was destined to become a legend. Mifune was not a man of half measures. Training was his obsession, a devotion that made it seem as though his day had 48 hours. Every morning he repeated the gokyo, the 5 classical sets of judo techniques, again and again until reaching perfection. In the afternoon he demanded Randori, free sparring, from anyone who dared cross the dojo door. Rank and size didn't matter. Mifune was always ready. This relentless rhythm quickly bore fruit. In 1909, he reached 4th dan, and by 1911 he already held 5th. His rise was meteoric, and many considered him the most technical judoka of his generation. What was his secret? Not brute strength nor privileged genetics, but the way he conceived of judo as a science. For Mifune, every technique was a question, and every answer led him to a more refined, more efficient version. While others obsessed over strength, he perfected Kuzushi, that imperceptible instant where the rival loses balance and floats just before being thrown. To him, judo was a dance of balance and imbalance, where mind prevailed over muscle. Was not only his technical mastery, but his unique way of applying it, a style many described as floating. When he gripped you, you didn't feel the rigidity of a solid body, but the evasion of something light light and untouchable. He was there and suddenly gone, only for the sky to turn into the mat a moment later. It was a disorienting experience. Mifune mastered human biomechanics like few others, and his judo was applied physics in motion. He didn't simply neutralize an attack. He absorbed it and turned it into his own weapon. Techniques such as uki-waza, the floating throw, were his specialty. His philosophy of soft judo was not passivity, but intelligence applied to combat. He said the body should be like balsa wood, light, adaptable, impossible to sink. He moved with feline grace, his center of gravity always under control, which allowed him to anticipate and react with millimetric precision. For his opponents, fighting Mifune was like trying to catch the wind, an impossible task that always ended with them on the ground, wondering what had just happened. By 1920, with nearly 2 decades at the Kodokan, Mifune had established himself as one of the most respected instructors. In 1926, he was named Chief Shihan, head professor of the Kodokan, an immense honor that confirmed his prestige. His teaching method was as unique as his judo. It wasn't about long theoretical explanations, but about showing, repeating, and letting students feel the technique firsthand. A slight gesture, a subtle body shift, or a flick of the wrist was enough for his uke to crash down without understanding how. Beginners left the dojo convinced they had learned something they could not put into words. His pedagogy was based on direct experience, on feeling judo rather than speaking about it. Under his influence, the Kodokan grew enormously during the 1920s and 30s, and his name began to circulate not only in Japan, but also abroad, where the Kodokan was already recognized as the world center of judo. World War II was a dark time for Japan, and of course, for judo. The Kodokan suffered damage. Many practitioners were sent to the front, and the tatami, once a place of learning and discipline, became nearly empty. Mifune, then in his 40s and 50s, remained in Tokyo and never abandoned teaching. Even under precarious conditions, with improvised tatamis and scarce resources, he continued transmitting the spirit of judo. His example became a form of silent resistance, keeping the practice alive when everything else seemed to collapse. After the war, judo faced a critical moment. The Allied occupation forces temporarily banned it, viewing it as linked to Japanese militarism. But figures like Mifune showed that judo was not a martial art of war, but a path of physical and moral education. Through his demonstrations, he helped rescue it from oblivion and present it as a universal way of discipline and respect. In 1937, Mifune had already reached 9th Dan, a rank reserved only for the greatest Kodokan masters. Until then, the 10th Dan was meant solely for Jigoro Kano, the founder of judo, who died in 1938 without receiving it. After the war, in 1945, the Kodokan Council made a historic decision to award Kyuzo Mifune the 10th Dan, making him the first judoka ever to receive it while alive. It was recognition of over 4 decades of absolute dedication, of his technical genius, and of the way he had embodied the essence of judo. Over time, other Japanese masters would also be granted the 10th Dan, but Mifune went down in history as the pioneer. When asked what it felt like to hold the highest possible rank, his answer reflected his humble character. He did not see it as a personal triumph, but as part of a path that never ends. With the years, Mifune attained not only the highest rank, but also a maturity of thought that made him a true philosopher of judo. His vision went far beyond techniques. For him, judo was a way of understanding life. He said Kuzushi, imbalance, was the key to everything, not only on the tatami, but in existence itself. When life unbalances you, the important thing is not to resist with force, but to adapt, redirect, and take advantage of the movement. Timing, acting at the precise moment, was equally crucial. A second too soon or too late, and the opportunity vanished. For Mifune, flexibility was not only physical but mental, the ability to flow without opposing the opponent's force, and all of this had to be rooted in respect, both inside and outside the tatami. Above all, he insisted that judo should be practiced with enjoyment, like a game of ingenuity and movement. In 1960, he condensed his ideas into Canon of Judo, a work still studied worldwide. There he compiled not only techniques, but also universal principles applicable to sport, education, and daily life. His way of thinking influenced not only judo, but also wrestling, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and even military training programs. In 1964, at 81 years old, Kyuzo Mifune was one of the most respected figures at the Tokyo Olympic Games, the first time judo appeared as an Olympic sport. Though he already walked with a cane, his mere presence on the tatami impressed everyone. He represented the union of judo's tradition and modernity. A year later, in 1965, Mifune passed away in Tokyo. The Kodokan, in an unprecedented gesture, closed its doors for a full day to honor his memory, the first time such a thing had happened since the war. His legacy is not measured only in techniques or ranks, but in the philosophy he left to generations of judokas, the idea that greatness does not depend on size or strength, but on intelligence, discipline, and the ability to adapt. The story of Kyuzo Mifune's is an inspiring reminder that true strength lies not in muscles, but in mind and spirit. A man of barely 56 kilos managed to redefine an entire martial art and elevate it to new heights of efficiency and elegance. His life teaches us that limits often exist only in our minds, and that constant practice, humility, and passion can transform the impossible into the inevitable.